Chapter 21. This isn't over. Alexander's POV. Scarlett walked away, her every step slow and deliberate. Each step of hers felt like a slap. She wasn't rushing, wasn't sneaking. No, she wanted me to see. She wanted me to burn. Her head was high, her spine straight, and her hair, that blazing auburn curtain, swayed along with her bold defiance. Jason, my beta, stood by my side. His unease radiated into every rustle of the night air. "Alpha," he growled low, his tone careful like he feared my reaction. "Are you going to let her leave like that?" My jaw clenched tighter. "No." Mason howled inside of me, his fury rippling through my veins. The scene before us was humiliating, a deliberate disrespect I couldn't ignore. I matched Scarlett's deliberate stride with my own, my boots banging against the earth with a forceful rhythm. Mason pressed me forward, demanding action, demanding control. In just a few seconds, I was within reach of her, cutting off her slow escape. "Scarlett," I said firmly. My voice came out rough, cutting through the empty night air. She stopped. I knew she could hear the command in my voice, but she turned slowly, deliberately. Her piercing emerald eyes raked over me, glinting with cold amusement. "You will accept the pack escort," I said, voice hardening with each word. She blinked, pretending to think about it, rolling her shoulders as though shaking off my mere presence like dust. Then she smirked. That cold, sharp curve of her lips lit fires under my skin. "Still trying, are you?" she mocked, tilting her head. The moonlight bounced against her impossibly bright eyes, turning her defiance into a weapon, still clinging to control like it's something you ever truly had. "Don't make this worse," I hissed, stepping closer. The air between us was sizzling with energy now, her wolf Cora watching Mason's every twitch. "Worse?" she repeated, mock surprise flooding her tone. Her smirk widened, the challenge dancing clearly on her face. "I think you've managed to make it worse all by yourself." "Enough," I growled, words vibrating with restrained command. But she laughed. That laugh seemed to slice right through me, sharp and cold, draining any composure I had left. "Enough? Are you sure, Alexander? From where I'm standing, it looks like you've barely started." Around us, the forest felt alive with tension. Jason shifted from foot to foot behind me, probably feeling Mason's frustration clawing to be let out. Her smirk deepened, feeding on the chaos she knew she was causing. "Tell me something, Alpha." Her words were slow, deliberate, emphasizing my title as if mocking the weight it carried. "If you're so full of authority, why don't you use it to fix the mess your mate's in?" My fists clenched at that, her taunting words more like daggers. "This isn't the place." "Oh no, this is the place. Let's talk about Grace, shall we?" She leaned closer, her voice dropping into a sharp whisper. "The real problem. You run to her. You plead for forgiveness while dragging me into your farce. Maybe you should worry more about her failing health than about who escorts me the 10 steps to my car." The venom in her words rattled me, Mason's growl echoing in my chest as her wolf brushed arrogantly against his energy. Her control, her calm mockery was unbearable. "This has nothing to do with—" "It has everything to do with her!" Scarlett snapped suddenly, her words cutting through the night like a whip. Her voice wasn't calm anymore, raw anger laced through each syllable. "You want me to pretend I don't see through you? You want to act like I'm blind to what you've been doing?" Jason audibly inhaled behind us, his discomfort palpable, but Scarlett wasn't finished. "You flaunted her in front of me. Over and over again. What was it, Alexander? Did you think I would roll over? Submit to a mate who doesn't even know the meaning of respect? Watch your words." "No," she snapped, stepping closer to me. Her emerald eyes blazed like wildfire, her wolf's power radiating as if daring Mason to try her. "You're worried about the pack's alliances, about the council's approval, but where were you, huh? Every time they whispered, every time your pack reduced me to some farce of a Luna, you weren't there. You were with her." Every word of hers was like another strike, relentless, unyielding, and she wasn't afraid of the tension radiating from my wolf. In fact, she thrived on it. "I told you to stop," I growled through gritted teeth, Mason snapping behind my voice. "And I told you the truth." She barely flinched. Then it hit me. Grace. Her voice cut across my mind through the pack link in weak, trembling gasps. "Alexander, I can't. It's burning." Her agony pierced through the fiery anger like an unwanted burden, dragging my focus, yet another thread pulling me in the opposite direction. "It's spreading. I can't breathe. Come, please. Alexander." Scarlett must have seen the shift in my expression because the smirk returned, controlled, knowing. Her eyes softened just for a moment, but not in kindness. No, it was pity. "Grace again?" she asked softly, her mock concern almost believable. "Better run along, Alpha. She seems to have perfected her damsel routine." I stiffened, struggling to manage the storm writhing beneath my skin. I shook my head violently, Mason roaring for something, or someone, to take the blame. "This ceremony will happen," I snarled, stepping forward. "Do you understand what will happen if you reject it? You have no allies now, Scarlett. The Northern Territories? The Council? They will cut every tie to my nothing," she slashed back venomously, cutting me off. "Save your threats, because I don't need your allies. I don't need your precious council's approval. I certainly don't need you." Her emerald gaze pierced through my resolve again. Her fiery defiance left no gap for doubt. "Better hurry to Grace," she said softly, each word laced with venom. "Silver's very, very deadly, isn't it?" And with that, something wild and untamed leaped from her presence. Her aura flared brilliantly, powerful, dominating in a way even Mason couldn't fully understand. Her figure blurred, the shadows bending around her as though they belonged to her. Then she was gone. The space where she had stood now felt like a void, mocking in its silence. "Alpha?" Jason's voice forced me back to the present, the crushing humiliation. Scarlett's laugh still ringing in my ears. I breathed heavily, staring into the darkness where she'd vanished. My fists remained clenched, shaking with raw power as Mason howled furiously. And then Grace's mind link came again. Weaker. More pitiful. "Alexander, please. I can't do this alone." A roar tore itself from my throat, primal and guttural, echoing into the dense forest and shaking loose the leaves on the trees. My alpha power surged outward uncontrollably, a manifestation of utter frustration and helplessness. Jason wisely retreated a step as my chest heaved with labored breaths. My knuckles turned white as I gripped at the air, Mason pacing maniacally inside me. Grace's weak voice echoed once more in the corners of my mind, an inescapable demand. "Alex, please, come. This wasn't over with Scarlett, not by a long shot." I turned sharply, my boots crushing the dirt beneath me, and stormed back toward the healing den. My heart burned, my rage simmering, building. But my mind, it was consumed by Scarlett, her blasted defiance, her unshakable power, and the venom in her parting words. Mason growled low inside of me as I vowed silently, "This isn't over, Scarlett." Chapter 22, Crazy Purchases. I stood in the chilled darkness, my breath harsh and uneven. Scarlett had disappeared into the shadows, leaving nothing behind but the fire she deliberately stoked within me. My fists curled so tightly that my nails bit into my palms, but the pain was nothing compared to the burn in my chest. She was taunting me, defying me at every turn, and the worst part, she was winning. Mason damn near snarled in my head, his rage a mirror of my own. "She's mocking us. She's mocking you," he growled, pacing with furious energy. Rage coursed through me, but there was nothing I could do to leash her, nothing I could do to stop her. She was immune in every way that mattered. "Alpha," Jason's uneasy voice cut through the mind link, tentative and riddled with hesitation. "It's Scarlett." I swore immediately. "What now?" "She's entered the shadow market." His voice wavered as if he already knew what my reaction would be. I froze, a growl rumbling low in my throat. The shadow market. Of course, neutral territory where wolves, rogues, humans, and whoever dared could meet and trade. Its existence was a thorn in every alpha's side, a lawless zone immune to pack rule. "She's making purchases," Jason continued cautiously. "Purchases?" I spat, my voice harsh. "What kind of purchases?" Jason hesitated far longer than I liked. "Rare silver antidotes, sacred moonstone elixirs, healing crystals, the rarest stocks. She's buying out supplies meant to last years. Her spending is—" He trailed off as if the truth was too astounding to admit aloud. "Astronomical," he finally said quietly. The words hit me like a slap. Scarlett wasn't just walking away. She was making a statement, through actions and coins alike. My blood boiled hotter, each heartbeat louder and heavier than the last. "She's targeting me." I realized bitterly, Mason growling with agreement in my chest. My mind raced with every insult, every slight she'd thrown in my face tonight. She'd made it clear she wanted no part of me. She'd sever every tie if she could. And now she was proving just how far she'd go. Jason's voice came again, low and hesitant. "Should I issue?" Restrictions? Even in his doubt, he knew what I was going to say. Cut her off. My words were ice. Her access to every Amber Pack-held resource had gone. She likes to act like she's above us. Let's see her survive without our aid. Yes, Alpha. Jason disconnected, hurriedly ending the link. I stalked toward the car, the heavy thud of my boots against the ground barely answering the rage filling me. The drive to the healing den was a blur, my focus narrowing on what lay ahead: Grace, suffering from the poison corrupting her wolf, and Scarlett, deliberately stripping me of the means to save her. I arrived at the healing den, and the tension hit me like a wall. The air was thick with the scent of silver, its metallic tang burning my nose. Wolves scurried around in controlled chaos, their faces tight with worry. Luna Sarah paced just outside Grace's chamber, her eyes darting frantically between the den's healers and the closed door. She radiated helpless desperation, her lips pressed tightly together, her hands trembling at her sides. "Alexander," she called out the second she saw me, rushing closer. "You must do something." The healers. Her voice cracked, and she swallowed hard, struggling to maintain her composure. "The healers are failing. Nothing is working. Nothing." Before I could respond, my phone buzzed violently against my hip. I pulled it out with a sharp motion, and Jason's voice filled the line before I could even greet him. "Alpha." Jason sounded more shaken than before. "Scarlett is still escalating." "What now?" The growl in my throat was clear. "She's bought out every single herb merchant within the Northern Territories." Jason rushed, his tone tinged with disbelief. "Silver antidotes, wolfsbane stocks, herbs for healing, disease-cleansing tinctures, entire inventories gone." I could barely find my voice as the venom spilled from my lips. "How much has she spent?" Jason hesitated again. Enough to supply multiple packs for months. She's stripping the area clean. There's nothing left on the market." "She dares?" My voice thundered, echoing in the air. My control snapped briefly, and Mason snarled through our bond, eager for retribution. Sarah's head swiveled toward me, her face paling as she overheard Jason's nervously detailed report. She took an unsteady step forward. "Scarlett bought all of it?" Her voice was no louder than a whisper, but the horror in her tone was palpable. Her gaze darted to Grace's closed door, visibly piecing the implications together. Grace's soft, painful whimpers pressed through the chamber walls, a relentless reminder of her condition. My chest tightened, guilt warring with rage as I grappled with yet another of Scarlett's blows. Inside the chamber, Grace was slumped against her bedding, her movements slow and faltering. The burns streaking across her arms and chest were raw and angry, the silver refusing to fade no matter how many salves the healers applied. Each breath she took seemed labored, as if it burned her lungs. I leaned closer, touching a hand gently to her shoulder, and she flinched slightly, her lips trembling. Her voice came out rasping and cracked. "She hates me," she whispered, her lashes fluttering shut as tears pooled in her eyes. "She's letting this happen." "Grace." My voice softened, guilt flooding me. Her words pierced my heart, feeding Mason's unrelenting protectiveness. "Alpha," one of the healers murmured behind me. His voice was low and uncertain. "We're doing everything we can, but her wolf is." He faltered, as if speaking the words aloud would condemn her faster. "Her wolf is declining," a second healer admitted cautiously. "Corruption from the silver. The poison is spreading, faster than expected." My phone buzzed again. Another notification from Jason. Another dagger stabbing clean into my boiling restraint. "Scarlett secured Shadow Clan exclusive rights," Jason reported hurriedly. "The deals she's made, Alpha, they're untouchable. She's purchased the Moonstone Tincture." Those words brought my fury to a breaking point. The Moonstone Tincture. The rarest, most legendary healing elixir known to exist, capable of cleansing silver poison at its deadliest. And Scarlett had it. The one thing that could save Grace was now under Scarlett's control, placed so far beyond our reach that it might as well have never existed in the first place. "Damn it!" I roared, my fist slamming into the nearest wall. The harsh reverberated off the sterile glass and floors of the healing den. My wolf howled furious protest within me, his frustration matched only by my own helplessness. Sarah gasped sharply, her face paling further as all the anger and humiliation in me boiled over. She clasped her hands to her mouth, visibly trembling as Grace whimpered behind us again. Jason's hesitant voice came again, weaker this time. Alpha, no one can challenge her hold. The merchants, the shadow market leadership, no one wants to cross Scarlett. They're terrified of her retaliation. My laugh came, harsh and dark. Of course they are, I growled under my breath, Mason's snarling energy scratching through my veins. The infamous Scarlett. She's burned every bridge. Now she's burning us too. I turned back toward Grace, her frailty squeezing the air from my lungs. The poison raced through her faster than even the healers could account for. Her breath hitched again, a weak gasp escaping her lips. The agony in her eyes was unbearable, her wolf's light growing dimmer in every moment I failed to fix this. And yet, Scarlett wasn't the only one in my mind. She wasn't just sabotaging, a word too light, too tame for what she was doing. She was wielding her skills like a blade, slashing at us, one connection at a time. Each calculated strike was meant to cripple us because she knew how much it would sting, and this time she struck when we were most fragile. Scarlett continues her spree, Jason added one final time. His voice was quiet, but the weight of it was deafening. The whole Shadow Clan? Her allies now. Our hands are tied. Chapter 23, Severance Fee. My phone buzzed just as I inspected an ornate crystal vial of moonstone elixir. The surface shimmered faintly under the light, giving off an almost supernatural glow. Its price tag alone would have made most wolves hesitate, but not me. Not today. I glanced at the phone screen. The name flashing made my pulse quicken slightly. Hunter Stone. I accepted the call without hesitation. Scarlett, came his smooth, level voice on the other end. Calm, confident, and completely in control as always. I'm pleased to inform you everything is finalized. You're now the exclusive distributor for all medicinal supplies in the Northern Territory under Shadow Authority. Congratulations. The corner of my mouth lifted slightly even as I tried to keep my voice neutral. You work fast. I believe in efficiency, he replied. There was a pause and then a faint chuckle. The signed documents are already in your inbox. You'll find every seal in place, every clause crystal clear. Our merchants have also been instructed to prioritize your orders over anyone else's. Effective immediately. It was hard to keep the satisfaction from seeping into my tone. Well, you certainly know how to make a statement. As do you. His voice was layered, the faintest hint of amusement reaching my ears. You've been busy, Scarlett. The market buzzes when someone purchases at your scale. Quite impressive. Business is booming, I replied, letting the edge of a smile creep into my words. I'm sure it is. He paused, his tone lowering slightly. Enjoy the rest of your spree, and remember, every advantage matters. With that, the line clicked off. Typical Hunter, he always made his point and exited with precision. Sliding my phone back into the hidden pocket of my jacket, I gestured to the merchant in front of me. Bring out the rest of your collection. I want everything, especially anything related to neural recovery. The wolf's mouth hung open for just a moment before he scurried to comply. Moments later, silver antidotes, sacred moonstone elixirs, and an assortment of ancient healing crystals were laid out before me. Their faint, radiant glows reflected in his eager eyes. I wasn't here to pick and choose. I was here to dominate. I'll take the lot, I said lightly, waving at the glittering display as though deciding on sweets at a bakery. The merchant gaped at me, his tail almost wagging at the sheer fortune he was about to make. Tentatively, he reached for the terminal to finalize the transaction. And then it happened. That card was declined, the merchant stammered, blinking in shock as the alert flashed on his screen. The Amber Pack's resource fund is frozen? His voice wavered, unsure of how I'd react to delivering such news. My jaw didn't tighten, my expression didn't harden, instead I laughed, quiet, cold, and sharp. Oh, Alexander, how predictable you've become. I slid my hand into my pocket, pulling out a card far more significant, a sleek obsidian card emblazoned with the unmistakable crest of the Shadow Organization. Use this instead, I said smoothly, holding the card out casually. The merchant's eyes widened, and for good reason. He wasn't just looking at a method, he was looking at power. Yes, of course, he cried, scrambling to finish the sale with renewed enthusiasm. The total flashed on his screen, an astronomical number large enough to make some alphas tremble. But I didn't blink. The card cleared the transaction in an instant. Package all of this immediately, I instructed, giving the merchant a moment to bask in his newfound wealth. He nodded so vigorously I thought his head might pop off. Right away, Alpha Scarlett. With every purchase, with every deal, I knew Alexander's pack was being notified. Every single dollar I spent, every rare resource now in my possession, it would reach his ears faster than wildfire. I stepped to the side as the merchant's assistants began carefully boxing up potions, antidotes, and elixirs. My phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't Hunter or another supplier. No. It was him. I unblocked the mind link to let Alexander's presence barrel in like a storm. His anger was palpable, hot, furious, and laced with disbelief. Scarlett, his voice growled through our connection. Do you even understand what you've done? A smirk curled my lips. Careful, Alpha, I teased, deliberately keeping my tone light. You're making it sound like I robbed your vault. You emptied every supply chain in the Northern Territory, he roared, Mason's fury lacing through his words. I pretended to consider that. Oh, did I? How careless of me. Although... I paused for effect. It's not like I plan to buy all this on your dime. You conveniently cut off that option. Don't give me that, he spat, pressing harder. Do you realize the position you've put me in? Do you even care about the consequences? Consequences? I repeated, feigning confusion. Oh, you mean like the severance fee you owe me for playing the perfect little Luna for 3 years? Consider this in full. My voice dropped into the ice I knew he despised. A deep growl rumbled from his end. This isn't amusing, Scarlett. That money was meant to ensure your cooperation with the marking ceremony. I laughed sharply, letting the sound echo through the bond. Marking ceremony? You must be joking. No, Alexander. This isn't a pre-wedding fund. Just consider this, compensation. You're stockpiling, he accused, his voice rising. You're planning. I interrupted him coldly. I'm stocking up to ensure that when Grace's precious health fails further, someone will actually be equipped to deal with it. The silence that followed my words was deafening. For just a moment, I wondered if he'd snapped the link entirely, but then I heard it. A low, guttural growl from Mason. No longer words, only primal frustration bleeding through. Without waiting for him to burst into another string of hollow threats, I severed the bond myself. Turning on my heel, I left the shop and headed directly back toward the healing center, where my staff had already begun preparing for the incoming shipments. The hum of activity hit me like music the moment I stepped inside. My employees buzzed around, organizing space, unloading crates, and marveling at the rare goods being delivered. I watched as Claire, my human secretary, froze mid-step, her wide blue eyes moving across the stacks of boxes. She turned toward me slowly, like her expression a mix of awe and confusion. Alpha Scarlett, she said hesitantly. Are all of these for us? Of course, I replied smoothly, striding across the space like it was a perfectly normal day. And the cost, she pressed, her voice trembling slightly. I waved a dismissive hand. It's paid for. No need to worry. She nodded hesitantly, clearly overwhelmed but too loyal to press further. As my team laid out the stock in neat rows, I made a show of handing out small, basic healing potions to my employees as casual bonuses. They gasped at the generosity, and I could already hear the whispers forming amongst them. I didn't mind. Let the whispers travel back to Alexander. Let them talk about how I handed out wealth as casually as someone might toss breadcrumbs. Eventually, the commotion settled, leaving me alone in the private sanctuary of my office. I slouched slightly into my chair, the adrenaline still buzzing faintly beneath my skin. The purchases, the confrontation with Alexander, the distribution agreements, it had all gone exactly as planned. I drummed my fingers against the wooden desk, half tempted to call Emma and share the delicious details of Alexander's meltdown. But before I could, the familiar vibration of my phone drew my attention. Hunter. Sliding my finger across the screen, I brought the phone to my ear. But when the voice on the other end spoke, my heart didn't just race, it stopped. Chapter 24, Return of the Shadow Alpha. The voice on the other end of Hunter's call stopped me cold. My breath caught, my grip on the phone tightening until my knuckles turned white. Scarlett, the voice said, deep, commanding, and unmistakable. Roman. The name hit me like a tidal wave. My mind reeled, my chest tightened, and for a moment I forgot how to breathe. I'll arrive at the eastern border before dusk, he continued, his tone even and firm. There was no hesitation, no room for argument. We need to talk. Before I could muster a response, The call ended, leaving me in silence. I stared at the phone in my hand, half expecting it to buzz again, to give me some excuse to dismiss his presence. But the silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. Roman? I lowered the phone, but my thoughts refused to settle. Roman was coming here. Tonight. My wolf, Cora, stirred uneasily beneath my skin. She didn't like the idea of Roman being so close again, of the memories his name dredged up. But I couldn't stop thinking about him, about us, and everything that had been left unsaid. Images from the past tumbled through my mind like waves crashing against the shore. Roman standing by my side, his blue eyes fierce and protective, teaching me how to fight when I was too small to hold my ground. Roman shielding me when the rogues attacked, his wolf, Logan, a blur of power and rage as he tore through our enemies. Roman's voice low and steady, calling me his little flame when frustration from my training brought me to tears. My breath hitched as the memories swirled, mixing with guilt. I had left him. I had left them. 3 years felt like a lifetime ago, but I could still see the pain in his eyes when I made the decision to leave the Thorn Pack. I told myself it was for the best, that I needed to find my own way. But how could I ignore the fact that Roman had built a world of protection for me, only for me to walk away from it? And now he was coming here, not as Roman, the foster brother who watched over me, but as Roman, the Shadow Alpha, the leader of the powerful Thorn Pack, the man who secretly controlled the Shadow Organization, a force that even the Northern Packs feared. How had I not known? The weight of his secret settled on my chest, making it hard to breathe. I clenched my fists, my nails biting into my palms. He had always been calculated, focused, but never like this. The Roman I knew would have told me. I glanced out the window of my office, looking toward the eastern horizon. Dread pooled in my stomach, and my wolf growled softly, unsettled. Roman. I whispered softly, his name tasting like ash on my tongue. I fought the urge to call Hunter back, to demand answers about why Roman was summoning me now, after all this time. But my pride wouldn't let me. A sharp vibration cut through my thoughts, and I blinked, startled. My phone buzzed on the table again, and I grabbed it quickly, half expecting it to be Roman again. It wasn't. Luna Sarah, I muttered bitterly as I saw the name flashing across the screen. I connected the call, but didn't bother hiding the icy tone in my voice. What do you want? Her voice was clipped, angry. Spare me the attitude, Scarlett. I don't have time for games. Did you send Hazel to Europe? Her question hit like a slap, but I recovered quickly. My lips curled into a small, amused smirk. Yes, I said simply, offering no further explanation. Why would you do that? She hissed. I could hear the barely contained fury in her voice. I leaned back in my chair, tapping my fingers against the desk. Because I could, I replied lightly. Just like you could pretend for years that Grace was your daughter while leaving me to fend for myself. Funny how choices work, isn't it? Do you understand what you've done? She snapped, her voice trembling with anger. Do you have any idea what Grace is going through right now? The poison is spreading. Without Hazel, her chances are. She's not my responsibility, I cut her off sharply. Grace has never been my responsibility. Or have you forgotten that she nearly destroyed me once? Funny how quick your memory fades when it suits you. Her intake of breath was audible, shaky. Scarlett, you're acting out of spite. Spite? I repeated, my anger flaring. Spite would have been refusing to share my resources a long time ago when Grace first started showing symptoms. Spite would have been laughing in your face when you asked for Hazel's help in the first place. No, Luna Sarah, this isn't about spite. This is about balance. Grace is your sister. Sarah's voice cracked, the word sister laden with emotion that sparked my fury even further. I pushed back from the desk, pacing the room. She is not my sister, I said coldly, every word dripping with venom. Don't ever call her that again. Scarlett. No. My voice rose, cutting through her attempts at manipulation. Stop it. Just stop. You can't use that word like it erases all the years you chose Grace over me. I wasn't blind, Sarah. I saw the way you let her take my place, how you treated her as the perfect daughter, even when you knew she wasn't yours. There was silence on her end, but I wasn't finished. So don't stand there and act like family matters to you now, because family wouldn't have turned their backs on me the way you did. I heard her swallow hard, her previously sharp tone softening into something more calculated. I can restore your privileges, she said cautiously. The sacred grounds, the access codes, everything. I can give it all back. Just bring Hazel back. The offer was laughable. I actually let out a bitter chuckle, shaking my head at her desperation. Restore my privileges, I asked, my tone mocking. For what? So you can continue using me as a pawn in your little show of power? Save your promises, Lunacera. I don't need them. You don't understand what you're throwing away, she snapped again, her voice rising as she scrambled to regain control of the situation. No, I said coldly, my voice dripping with finality. You're the one who doesn't understand. Grace may have your love. She may have the Winters Pack's resources. But she doesn't have me, and she never will. Scarlett, this conversation is over, I said. My wolf growled a low warning under her breath, echoing my anger. With a flick of my thumb, I hung up and immediately blocked her number, the silence that followed ringing louder than any of her pleading words. For a moment, I stood in the stillness of my office, my chest heaving with the effort it took to contain my emotions. The conversation had gone exactly as I wanted, but the bitter taste of disappointment still lingered. Sarah had always been predictable, always trying to tug at my emotions, to manipulate me into submission. But this time, she had nothing left to use against me. Not anymore. I felt Cora stir beneath my skin, her silent approval humming through the bond we shared. She knew, just as I did, that whatever hold Sarah might have had over us was gone. Still, my mind drifted back to Roman. To his voice, his presence, his call for me to meet him at dusk. The thought of him lingered like a phantom in the corner of my mind, refusing to be ignored. I closed my eyes, steeling myself for what was to come. The day was far from over, and dusk felt like it was already breathing down my neck. Roman was coming. Chapter 25, Independence. The wind felt sharper as the sun dipped, losing its warmth. My arms hugged tighter around me, but it wasn't just the chill. My nerves coiled tighter the closer we got to dusk. My wolf, Cora, wasn't helping. She wasn't calm. She wasn't quiet. She kept pushing, bristling. He's coming, Cora growled. Her tone was a mix of warning and strange exhilaration. Roman, he's ours. I gritted my teeth, trying to steady my breathing. Stop it! I hissed under my breath, but my voice wavered more than I wanted. You feel him. Pretend all you want, but every fiber of you knows it, Cora pressed, practically vibrating beneath my skin. She growled low in my mind, so insistent it was dizzying. I can't, I muttered, cutting myself off before the words spilled out. Because the truth was, she wasn't wrong. The shift in the air hit before I even laid eyes on him. It was faint at first, just the ghost of his scent carried by the wind, pine and midnight. It was still the same, still the one I couldn't forget even after 3 years apart. My chest tightened as the scent deepened, stronger now. There was something new, though, something sweeter, richer, almost like honey, stirring emotions in me I couldn't name. My breath hitched as his silhouette emerged. My heart jumped to my throat as my gaze locked on him for the first time. Roman? He stepped out of the shadows, his frame taller and more imposing than I remembered. He wasn't just Roman anymore. He was power itself, etched into every muscle, every move. His piercing blue eyes found me immediately, sharp and unflinching, like they saw far too much. I froze. My entire body tensed as his energy rolled over me. Every instinct within me screamed to submit, to lower my gaze before his dominance overwhelmed me completely. I dropped my stare to the ground, unable to hold up against the weight of him. My wolf wasn't helping. She didn't want to fight. Cora whimpered low in my chest, her presence shrinking beneath Logan's suffocating power. I'd spent the last 3 years telling myself I'd moved on, but standing there, with Roman staring at me with such intensity, I knew how badly I'd lied. The silence between us stretched, thick with emotions I couldn't sort through. My hands curled tighter around the small bouquet of mountain flowers I'd brought. My palms were damp from nerves, but I gripped the stems harder, not daring to let them go. "They're for you," I said softly, breaking the silence. My voice came out too quiet. I sounded fragile. I held them out toward him, the small bundle shaking slightly in my trembling hands. He said nothing. His gaze dropped to the flowers briefly, but his face gave no response, no flicker of thanks, no acknowledgement. It was as if the gesture meant nothing. The pang of hurt slashed through me unexpectedly. I drew in a shaky breath. Still, the silence pressed. His eyes bored into mine, unblinking as if he was waiting for something. Trying to stay calm, I stepped closer. My hands moved before I could think, reaching for his jacket. "It's crooked," I murmured, adjusting the edge of his collar. The motion was small, automatic. I'd done this so many times in the past that my fingers knew the exact motion. The childhood memories spilled over in that one small gesture. "Brother?" I whispered. The word slipped out. It felt natural, familiar, even if it stung to say now. His reaction was instant. Roman's hand shot out, grabbing my wrist. I gasped at the force of it as he yanked me closer. The strength in his grip sent a jolt through my arm, but it wasn't painful, just firm, unyielding. And then I was pressed against his chest, close enough to feel the heat radiating from him, the pure energy pulsing in his veins. His scent engulfed me, pinning me in place. A low growl rumbled from him, but vibrating through my frame. The sound was deep, almost guttural. 3 years. Each word hit like a punch, laced with a cold edge of anger. My throat tightened, the attempt to explain dying before I could form the words. I couldn't look away from him. His blue eyes burned with something trapped between fury and disappointment. His jaw was clenched tight, his expression dangerously controlled, but the tension radiating from him told me how deeply my absence had cut. "You've got it, little wolf," he growled again, his voice lower now but no less intense. "After 3 years, your freedom, your independence." The bitterness in his tone was enough to sting. I tried to speak, to apologize, but my voice faltered. Nothing came out. "Was it worth it?" he demanded. The sarcasm dripped thickly from his voice as his eyes narrowed on me. I stammered. Words. I needed words, but my mind was a train wreck. And Roman wasn't waiting. His hand slid from my wrist, curling around my forearm in a possessive grip. I could hear Logan's energy snarling beneath the act, territorial and dominant, echoing loud in my ears. I was being claimed all over again. But then he started pulling me, not letting me linger. His strides were deliberate, powerful, and I had no choice but to follow where he led. "Roman." My weak protest was cut off the moment I saw where we were going. A sleek, black SUV sat idling just outside the border, its sharp, polished exterior branded with the Shadow Pack's emblem. The realization sent my pulse racing again. If Roman had brought his personal transport here, it meant one thing: he wasn't planning to leave anytime soon. My chest tightened as my mind raced. He was staying. Here. Before I could turn, before I could even think, Roman's intense gaze swept down and caught my reaction. He saw it instantly. How I stiffened, how I faltered mid-step. His lip quirked, his dark amusement unmistakable. He pulled me forward again, ignoring my hesitation. Hunter stood to the side, waiting by the vehicle with neutral readiness plastered across his face. His sharp green eyes darted between Roman and me, but he didn't ask. He didn't need to. He already knew this wasn't a reunion. It was reckoning. Hunter opened the back door without a word, giving a faint nod of acknowledgement to Roman. I moved toward the SUV hesitantly, but before I could think to climb inside myself, Roman leaned down, his hand pressed against my lower back, firmly guiding me in. I stifled a startled gasp. He followed me in too closely, far too quickly. I scooted to the far end of the seat, breath held, trying to put the widest gap I could manage between us. My hands rested against my thighs as I fought to steady myself. But the space didn't last long. Roman's hand reached effortlessly across the divide and caught my arm again. With one fluid motion, I was pulled back toward him, his strength impossible to resist. "Roman." My words were barely out before he moved me onto his lap, his firm grip locking me into place like a cage I couldn't escape. My hands braced against his chest as I squirmed to move, but there was no give. His arms wrapped tighter, anchored like bands of iron. "Roman," I sputtered, my cheeks flushing. "I'm not a pup anymore." His response came in the form of a soft hum, entirely unbothered by my protest. He traced his fingers along my jawline with careful precision, the dangerous gentleness in his touch making my pulse skyrocket. 3 years without a word, he mused, his tone calmer but no less intense. "Did your independence taste sweet, little wolf?" There was no mistaking the sarcasm, and it hurt more than I'd care to admit. "It wasn't quite 3 years, I whispered weakly, though even I heard the pathetic excuse in my voice. Roman leaned closer, his gaze burning into mine. "You're quiet now," he murmured. "You had so much conviction back then. Tell me, Scarlett, what happened to that fire of yours?" I struggled to form words, but my throat tightened again, the weight of his scrutiny unbearable. My voice caught. There's so much to tell you. He tilted his head slightly, his blue eyes softening just enough to let me catch a glimpse of the Roman I had known before. Chapter 26. My Roman. The SUV glided smoothly through the chilled night air, the atmosphere inside tense yet oddly familiar. Roman had kept silent since we left the border, the hum of the engine filling the void between us. Every now and then I glanced at him from the corner of my eye, unable to stop myself. His face was calm but brooding, his sharp jawline set in a way that brought back so many memories. He kept one arm resting on the door handle, his fingers tapping idly on the leather. The blue light from the dashboard illuminated his features, but his eyes never left the road ahead. Finally, I broke the silence. "Where are we going?" My voice was steady, though Cora stirred restlessly beneath my skin. Roman didn't look at me, his voice low and deliberate. "To your villa." A sharp jolt shot through me. "My villa? How do you—" Hunter, seated in the passenger's seat, turned slightly to face me. The faintest smirk played on his lips as he cut in. "We confirmed the address after you entered the Shadow Clan's resource network yesterday. You didn't think we'd overlook your movements, did you?" I clenched my fists, tension building in my spine as I realized they had tracked me without my knowledge. "Thorough, aren't we?" I muttered, sarcasm dripping from my tone. Roman's eyes flicked toward me briefly, their ice-blue intensity making my breath catch. "It wasn't hard. 3 years might seem like a long time, little wolf, but your habits leave trails." The nickname stirred more emotions than I cared to admit. I forced myself to scoff lightly. 3 years of seclusion isn't exactly leaving trails. Hunter chuckled, his voice layered with amusement. "Seclusion? You've been impressive, Scarlett. No one expected you'd build such independence. A center like yours? That isn't common." He tilted his head. "Roman doesn't seem as impressed as the rest of us, though, does he?" I glanced toward Roman again, and my stomach twisted at the cold frustration simmering in his eyes. It wasn't anger at my success. It was something deeper, a dissatisfaction that stung more than accusations ever could. I shifted uneasily in my seat. "Your silence says a lot," I muttered, crossing my arms. Roman let out a low chuckle, his voice tinged with disapproval. "You'll want to save your defense for when we're behind closed doors, Scarlett." His words settled thickly in the air, silencing any retort I might have had. I finally looked away, focusing on the ever-darkening road ahead. Minutes later, the SUV slowed to a stop in front of my villa. The sight of my home brought a brief wave of comfort, but it evaporated the moment I felt Roman's piercing gaze on me. Quietly, he stepped out of the car, his towering frame cutting an imposing figure against the soft glow of the porch lights. Hunter was the first to approach the door, his stride purposeful. Before I could even retrieve my keys, he had already opened it, motioning for us to enter. Roman lingered behind me for a moment, his sharp eyes surveying the surroundings. "This is close, too close to Alexander's pack." His tone was dangerously neutral, but the weight of the accusation hit me like a hammer. I straightened my back and turned to face him head-on. "The location is strategic for my work. It has nothing to do with those idiots." His lips twitched, a flicker of amusement breaking through his icy demeanor. "Idiots?" I nodded firmly, refusing to back down. "That's what they are, their politics, their games. It's all beneath me. This villa is mine, earned with my own work. The Shadow Organization contracts were my decision, my independence." I let the last word hang heavily in the air, hoping to hammer the point home. Roman said nothing at first, but the tension in his shoulders eased slightly. "Interesting choice of words," he muttered under his breath before stepping inside. Once we were settled, I busied myself in the kitchen. The familiarity of preparing tea grounded me momentarily. My hands moved mechanically, picking out the finest moon-blessed herbal leaves I reserved for important guests. The irony of the gesture wasn't lost on me. As I reached into the cabinet, the faintest trace of Alexander's scent hit me. My movements froze, bile rising in my throat as the memory of his intrusion surged back. It wasn't just a scent, it was a reminder of how close I'd let him come to trespassing on everything I held sacred. "What's wrong?" Roman asked quietly, his deep voice sending a chill down my spine. I turned slightly, finding him standing unnervingly close. His eyes narrowed as he caught a whiff of the foreign alpha's smell. In an instant, his entire posture changed, Logan's power radiating dangerously beneath his skin. "There's a scent of an intruder here," Roman said darkly, his tone vibrating with restrained anger. "Whose?" Cursing inwardly, I grabbed the tea leaves quickly, trying to deflect. "It's nothing important," I said calmly, pouring the hot water. "The past is irrelevant now." Roman's ice-blue eyes locked onto mine, his voice soft but undeniably dangerous. "Playing hostess to other alphas, are we?" I shot him a sharp glare, clutching the teapot tightly. "I wasn't playing hostess. There's no one here now but you." His inspecting gaze moved across the room, lingering briefly on the marks on the couch and the faint traces of rearranged furniture. His expression darkened. Ignoring his tension, I handed him the tea, hoping to change the subject. "Moon tea," I said simply. "It should help you rest after your long trip. You said you haven't slept in 36 hours. He took the tea but didn't immediately drink it. His eyes remained fixed on me, unnervingly perceptive. "Scarlett," he said quietly, his voice like a slow-building storm, "how much have you been hiding?" I swallowed hard, forcing myself to meet his gaze. "Enough to survive." A cold laugh escaped him, one that carried both amusement and anger. He finally sipped the tea, though his posture remained tense. "Survive? You call this survival? Living this close to territory that disrespects you? Associating with packs that cut you out of their schemes the second it suits them?" I clenched my jaw, my patience thinning. "You think this is about them?" I shot back. "This is about me. Every choice I've made has been for me, for what I've built, and I'm not about to apologize for it." Roman leaned closer, his intense gaze making it impossible to look away. "You've built something impressive, little wolf," he admitted, his deep voice dropping into a lower, more dangerous register. "But don't mistake this for independence when you're still entangled by their mess." I crossed my arms, glaring at him. "I cut my ties. That's more than you can say for yourself. You're the one who's been playing King of Shadows, judging from your operations." Roman only smirked, that infuriatingly confident tilt of his lips making my blood boil. "You'll find my operations are very specific, unlike the chaos you've allowed to fester here." I opened my mouth for a sharp retort, but stopped when his expression softened, not with gentleness, but with something far heavier. 5 minutes, he growled, his voice darkening to a command. "Explain why you fled during the Thorn Pack's darkest hour." The weight of his words slammed into me, every muscle in my body tensing. My breath hitched, my chest tightening as decades of memories threatened to crush me. I didn't answer. Instead, I countered, my voice trembling slightly. "What about the Morrison family?" "Morrison family, my adoptive father's Beta and his daughter Lily, they were my nightmare." Roman's reaction was immediate. A low, cold snort left him as he leaned back against the couch. "The Morrison family," he repeated, his tone sharp and mocking. "They're gone. They don't exist anymore." I blinked, startled. What? What do you mean?" "They aligned themselves with rogues," he said simply, his words biting. "Traitors, power-hungry fools. Their ambition got them crushed, their power structure obliterated. A year ago, their legacy ended." I felt as though the air had been knocked out of my lungs. Roman's sharp gaze softened ever so slightly as he watched the mix of emotions play over my face. "You don't have to fear them anymore," he added quietly. "The Thorn Pack doesn't tolerate betrayal." Relief washed over me like a wave, but my gaze remained locked on Roman, his sheer presence overwhelming as he sat there emanating power and control. This was Roman, my Roman, and despite the tension between us, despite everything we hadn't resolved, I couldn't deny the safety his presence brought. Chapter 27. I'm done running. Roman's words about the Morrison family's fate were like ice against my skin. Even though I hated them for what they had done, for all the pain they caused, hearing they were completely destroyed hit me in a way I didn't expect. My breath caught as a flood of emotions overtook me. I couldn't fight it. My body reacted before my mind did. My hands reached out, clutching Roman's shirt as if holding on to him would stop the memories from taking over. The fabric bunched in my trembling fingers and my legs felt unstable beneath me. Tears welled in my eyes, threatening to spill, and my chest tightened painfully. I felt Cora stir restlessly beneath my skin, whining softly, her sorrow blending with mine. The weight of the past, everything I had tried to suppress, rushed back full force. "Roman?" My voice broke, barely audible, as I spoke his name. The tears began to fall freely, no longer held back by my pride or my attempts to seem strong. Roman stiffened immediately, his whole body going rigid at my outburst. His sharp gaze had been cutting through me moments before, but now it softened ever so slightly, the dangerous intensity shifting into something I couldn't quite name. I pressed my forehead against his chest, unable to look up, my tears soaking the fabric of his shirt. My body trembled uncontrollably as the sobs overtook me. "You left," Roman said finally, his voice low and edged with icy bitterness. His words were sharp, slicing through me like daggers. "You left us. You left her. And now, after all this time, you ask about Catherine?" His voice carried an accusation that made Cora whimper deeper inside me. I tightened my grip on his shirt, shaking my head weakly. "I had to," I choked out as my tears fell harder. "I didn't have another choice." "Roman." His body remained tense, his arms unmoving, even though I clung to him like my life depended on it. For a moment, I questioned whether he would push me away, but then, as if something inside him gave way, his arms finally moved. Slowly, almost reluctantly, he wrapped them around me. The embrace wasn't warm, it wasn't comforting, it was firm and unyielding, as if to remind me that this wasn't forgiveness, but even so it made my tears come harder. "You always have a choice." Roman replied coldly, his tone brimming with frustration. "Don't act like this was the only path. Don't act like you weren't the one who abandoned us." "I didn't abandon anyone," I shouted back, my voice breaking. My fists clenched tightly around his shirt, my body still trembling. "I was trying to protect all of you. Trying to protect her." His jaw tightened visibly, his icy blue eyes narrowing sharply. "Protect us?" he repeated mockingly. "Protect her? From what, Scarlett? From your cowardice?" The word sent an ache through my chest, so sharp it felt physical. My knees weakened as I struggled to keep myself from falling apart completely. "You don't know what I had to do," I whispered, my voice pained. "Then explain it to me," Roman growled, his grip on me tightening for a moment. "Explain why you ran instead of fighting, because from where I'm standing it looks like you chose the weakest option." His voice carried a judgment I couldn't respond to, his Wolf Logan's presence pressing heavily against me. The words spilled out before I could stop myself. "Because they were going to kill her," I cried, my emotions crashing over me like tidal waves. "They had Luna Catherine, Lily and her father. They threatened to use silver poison on her wolf if I didn't leave. I couldn't stay, Roman. I couldn't risk it." His expression darkened in an instant. His eyes became lethal, cold fury overtaking every feature of his face. "Lily Morrison," he said, his voice dripping with venom. As it wasn't a question. It was like he already knew, but hearing it made him seethe with anger all over again. I nodded quickly, tears streaming freely as I clutched at his chest harder. "They knew your power wasn't stable yet. That's why they struck after Dad died. They thought it was the perfect chance. They thought," my voice faltered, "they thought I was your weakness." Roman let out a low, dangerous growl that sent chills down my spine. Logan's power surged through him, unmistakable in its presence. His anger wasn't loud, it was quiet, simmering, and deadly. "They used Catherine to control you?" Roman's words were cold and cutting. I nodded again, helplessly. "They said they'd kill her if I stayed." My chest heaved with the effort of speaking between sobs. What was I supposed to do? Stand there and let them hurt her? "You were supposed to fight," Roman barked, his voice rising slightly. "Not cower, not run." "They were too strong," I spat weakly, my voice trembling. "They had rogues on their side, and you weren't there, Roman. You were gone, fighting at the border." His eyes burned into mine, his emotions unreadable. "You should have trusted me," he replied, his voice quiet but no less scathing. "They would have killed her," I shot back, louder this time. "Don't you understand? Her life was on the line, Roman. I couldn't let that happen. I couldn't let them hurt her for my sake." Roman's jaw worked as he processed my words. His anger didn't falter, though the sharpness in his expression shifted slightly into something resembling calculation. "And after you left," he said softly, the mocking bitterness returning. "What then? Did their threats stop?" I hesitated, guilt washing over me in waves. I couldn't answer right away, and that was answer enough for him. "Of course not," he continued, his voice dripping with disdain. You gave them control, Scarlett. They knew they had you. They kept threatening me, I shouted, my voice breaking under the weight of the admission. Even after I left, they kept sending warnings. And then I swallowed hard, the lump in my throat suffocating. I couldn't stop the truth from tumbling out now. That's why I agreed to the arranged mating with Alexander, I confessed, my voice barely above a whisper. I thought it would keep them away, that they'd leave me alone if I became part of the Winters pack. Roman's lips curled into a cold, humorless smile. You thought that spineless excuse for an alpha would protect you? That his pack could shield you from them? It worked, I said weakly, though even I didn't believe the words. For a while, it worked. Roman shook his head slowly, his gaze filled with equal parts disappointment and frustration. You've been their puppet, Scarlett. All this time, you've let them pull your strings. My shoulders shook as fresh tears fell. I wanted to argue, to push back, but I couldn't, because he was right. Roman leaned closer, his voice dropping to a lethal whisper. And where are they now, Scarlett, the ones you feared so much? A shiver ran through me at the question. Where? I hesitated. Where are they? Gone, Roman said bluntly. There was no emotion in his voice, no triumph, just cold finality. Lily is chained in silver. Her father? Dead. Their allies? Wiped out. My heart stopped for a moment, the weight of his words sinking in. The Morrison family was truly no more. I ended it, Roman continued, his gaze piercing mine. The moment I had the power, I crushed them. Every trace of their existence was erased. I stared at him, too stunned to speak. Relief and disbelief clashed violently within me. The weight I had carried for so long was suddenly lifted, but it left behind a hollow ache I didn't know how to process. Roman's expression softened slightly, just enough to let a flicker of vulnerability show. You don't have to fear them anymore, Scarlett. His words wrapped around me like a lifeline, but the guilt gnawed at me. I didn't know, I whispered. Roman exhaled sharply, his frustration still evident. Of course you didn't. You were too busy hiding, running. No, I said firmly, though my voice trembled. I wasn't running. I wanted to protect you, all of you. By abandoning us? Roman shot back. Tears welled up again, but I fought to keep my voice steady. I didn't abandon you, I said quietly. I swear, I didn't. I didn't see another way. Roman sighed, the tension in his jaw easing just slightly. And now, Scarlett, will you keep running? I shook my head, meeting his gaze with newfound determination. No, I said softly but firmly. I'm done running. Good, Roman replied simply, his tone neutral, because I'm not going to let you leave again. Before I could respond, he added, Catherine burned sacred moon herbs for you every day you were gone. His voice softened, the weight of his words sinking deep. For your safety, for your wolf's strength. Fresh tears spilled as my heart twisted. She did that for me? Roman nodded, his icy gaze watching me closely. Always. The emotions overwhelmed me again, but this time, the tears came silently. Silence hung thick between us for a moment before Roman broke it. Now, he started, his gaze hardening, what are you going to do about Alexander and the mess you've tangled yourself in with the Winters pack? Chapter 29, 2 Alphas Encounters. The tension in the air was so thick it felt like I could choke on it. Roman was watching me with that piercing ice-blue gaze, his stance effortlessly dominating the space between us. His presence was suffocating, pulling me into a whirlwind I didn't know how to escape. Then he said it. That question. Who do you like now? His voice was calm on the surface, but there was a dangerous edge beneath it that made my stomach twist. I froze, fighting the urge to lash out or break down. My feelings, the ones I'd guarded for years, were crashing against the walls I'd built. His words made something inside me snap. I jerked away from him, frustration and hurt bubbling up. You're seriously asking me that? My voice cracked slightly, and I hated how raw I sounded. His sharp eyes softened just enough to taunt me. He tilted his head, his tone alight with mockery. Little wolf, why aren't you speaking? He caught my chin between his thumb and forefinger, lifting my face like I was some wayward pup. Stop it! I slapped his hand away, my chest heaving. Standing abruptly, I put as much distance as I could between us, my feet pacing across the small space of my living room. My emotions tumbled out before I could rein them in. Don't you know already? Don't you feel it? If I didn't care about you, if I wasn't worried about being a burden to you, do you think I would have left you? Would I have endured 3 years away from the only person who ever made me feel safe? The words spilled out like water from a dam finally breaking. I didn't care about the tears that blurred my vision or how much my voice trembled. Roman didn't answer. Instead, he moved with infuriating calmness, advancing toward me as if drawn by some invisible force. Before I could retreat further, he grabbed my wrist and yanked me into his arms with a force that left no room for resistance. Roman. My protest was cut off as his lips descended on mine, silencing every argument, every word still caught in my throat. The kiss was nothing like I'd expected. It wasn't gentle. It was possessive, overwhelming and demanding, as if he were trying to claim every piece of me I'd tried to hide from him. Heat rushed through me. My hands pressed against his chest, weakly at first, but then my fingers curled into his shirt, holding on to him and everything he was. His arms tightened around me, anchoring me to him in a way that left me breathless. When he finally pulled back, his forehead pressed against mine. Those piercing blue eyes softened in a way that stole any remaining fight I had left. "I'm sorry," he murmured, his voice rough and unsteady. "I didn't want to force anything. I just had to know, had to make sure." He pulled me closer, his lips brushing my temple. "You're mine. Do you understand that, Scarlett? Mine, and I'll wait for as long as it takes until you're ready to accept this." The tears I'd held back for years cascaded down my cheeks. All the walls I'd built to hold myself together shattered in that moment. Hugging him tightly, I let the years of pain, longing, and love I couldn't suppress pour out freely. Time slipped by as Roman held me, his larger frame enveloping me completely. Exhaustion washed over me, wrapping me in a strange sense of safety I hadn't felt in years. Eventually, sleep took me. The last thing I remembered was the feeling of his fingers gently brushing through my hair. When I woke up, the sun was gone, replaced by soft moonlight filtering through the curtains. I could hear movement beyond my bedroom door, and my throat felt dry. Silently, I padded out into the hallway, still disoriented from sleep. The sight that greeted me stopped me in my tracks. Roman stood in the dim light, a towel slung low around his hips, his muscular upper body glistening with droplets of water that skimmed along the sharp lines of his abs and chest. My face heated instantly, my pulse racing uncontrollably. Cora, my wolf, howled enthusiastically in the back of my head, her excitement echoing in ways I desperately tried to suppress. "Enjoying the view?" Roman's voice was low, teasing, and entirely too dangerous for my weak, sleep-hazed state. I tried not to look directly at his torso, at all the hard planes and curves that made him undeniably, breathtakingly male. My gaze hovered somewhere around his collarbone before darting back up to meet his smirking face. "Put some clothes on," I mumbled, crossing my arms defensively. He moved closer, his towering height shrinking the space between us until I felt completely cornered. He grabbed my hand and placed it against the hard warmth of his chest. "Go ahead," he said, his smirk deepening. "Want to give it a try, sis?" My cheeks flared brighter than a flame, and I tried to yank my hand back, but his grip held steady. He leaned in, his lips brushing my ear just enough to send shivers racing down my spine. "Scarlett," he said lowly, my name rolling off his tongue with a degree of intimacy that made me both terrified and exhilarated. Looking into my eyes with a burning intensity, he leaned down and kissed me again, his lips stealing what little rationality I had left. Before the moment could spiral further out of control, the sharp sound of banging echoed through the hallway. "Scarlett!" Alexander's voice filtered through the heavy door, filled with desperation. "Open the door, please. I need to talk." Roman groaned, breaking the heated moment but not stepping away from me. His gaze darkened dangerously, his wolf Logan rising with barely concealed fury. "Great timing," he muttered sarcastically, releasing me but keeping me close as he moved toward the door. "Wait." I tried to catch his arm, but it was too late. Roman yanked the door open, revealing a disheveled and frantic Alexander standing on my doorstep. Alexander froze. His eyes widened as they took in the sight before him. Roman standing there shirtless, still towel-clad, his arm casually draped around my waist. "What the hell is this?" Alexander's shock twisted quickly into anger, his amber eyes flashing as his wolf stirred beneath his skin. Roman's expression was calm, almost bored, but his hand tightened slightly on my hip in a show of dominance, and his voice, when he finally spoke, carried all the weight of his unyielding authority. "Shut up," Roman said flatly, his alpha power vibrating in the air. Alexander visibly flinched, his breathing uneven as Roman's energy pressed down on him. Gasping slightly, he struggled to straighten, his anger overriding his caution. "You're doing this," Alexander accused bitterly, pointing a finger at me. "You're letting Grace suffer just so you can break off our marriage and run to him?" His gaze flickered to Roman, and his jaw clenched. I spoke for the first time, my voice icy and restrained. "Watch what you say, Alexander. That's not why Hazel isn't here." Alexander's frustration boiled over, and he stepped closer despite Roman's looming presence. "I'll agree to anything. Anything. You'll have full access to the territories, healing resources. I'll dissolve the marriage and sever all ties with their packs. Just call Hazel back to save Grace." Before Alexander could take another step forward, Roman moved. His alpha power surged across the room like a tidal wave, leaving Alexander gasping for air. Chapter 30, Alpha's Fight. The room was suffocating with tension. It curled around us, tightened its grip, and threatened to detonate at any second. Roman stood beside me, tall and commanding, his piercing blue eyes sharply fixed on Alexander. Across from him, Alexander's body was rigid, his jaw clenched so tightly I thought it might snap. Anger radiated from him in waves, his amber eyes glowing faintly with the power of his wolf, Mason, clawing to be let out. "Leave, Alexander," I said, keeping my voice steady, though my pulse raced wildly. I didn't trust the fragile whole situation. It felt like walking on the edge of a blade. "You need to go." Alexander snapped his glare toward me, disbelief rolling across his face. His lips curled into a sneer. "You think I'll just walk away after this?" He threw his arm out, motioning toward Roman, his words dripping with venom. "After seeing this, you planned this, Scarlett, didn't you?" "Planned what?" I shot back, narrowing my eyes. "Don't act innocent," he shouted, his voice shaking with rage. "You let Grace suffer. You've sabotaged everything. For this, for your affair with him." I barely had time to process the accusation before Roman moved. It happened so fast, I didn't even see him take the first step. One moment he was beside me, calm and cold, and the next, the sound of flesh meeting flesh cracked through the air like thunder. Roman's fist collided with Alexander's jaw in a bone-jarring impact. The noise made me wince. Alexander flew backward, crashing into my coffee table. The wood gave an agonizing groan before it splintered beneath him, crumbling into shards. "Roman!" I yelled, but he wasn't listening. Alexander groaned as he staggered to his feet, one hand clutching his jaw. His eyes burned with fury as he spat blood onto my floor. "You think you can just hit me and walk away?" he snarled, his voice low and dangerous. His wolf, Mason, simmered just beneath his human form, desperate for release. Roman didn't respond with words. He rolled his shoulders, an almost casual movement, but his energy crackled ominously. His smirk was sharp, his icy eyes flicking over Alexander like a hunter sizing up its prey. "Walk away?" Roman said, his tone deceptively light. He stepped forward, his towering frame casting a shadow over Alexander. "I'm not walking away from anything." Alexander let out a feral growl, his claws extending as he prepared to strike. "You're nothing but an outsider," he spat, lunging at Roman with all the strength his wolf could muster. The clash was deafening, a tangle of power that shook the room. Roman met Alexander's attack head-on, their bodies colliding with enough force to rattle the windows. I pressed myself against the wall, heart pounding as I watched the chaos unfold. Roman's speed was unrelenting. He stepped to the side, avoiding Alexander's clawed swing, and countered with a crushing elbow to his ribs. The dull thud of impact made my stomach churn. Alexander retaliated quickly, swiping at Roman's arm and managing to graze him just enough to draw blood. But Roman didn't even flinch. He glanced at the shallow cut and smirked as if Alexander's effort amused him. "That's it," Roman taunted, his voice a cold whisper. "This is the strength of the North's heir?" Alexander snarled, his wolf finally breaking free as his teeth elongated and his golden eyes intensified. "I'll show you strength." They collided again, an explosion of pure dominance that sent furniture flying. My couch tipped over, crashing against the wall, as their wolves clawed for control. Roman grabbed Alexander by the collar with ease, using his superior strength to slam him against the wall. The impact was violent, leaving a dent in my drywall. His icy blue gaze burned with lethal intent as he loomed over the struggling Alpha. "Roman, stop!" I yelled, my voice almost drowned out by the growls vibrating through the room. "You're going too far." But Roman didn't move an inch. His grip on Alexander tightened as claws extended partially from his hand, pressing threateningly against Alexander's throat. "An outsider?" Roman said quietly, his voice a dangerous, low rumble. "Do you even know who you're speaking to?" Alexander struggled, his amber pack wolf fighting desperately, but Roman's raw power was unstoppable. I could feel my wolf, Cora, trembling beneath my skin. For the first time in years, she whimpered, startled by Roman's unyielding dominance. It was suffocating, even for me, and I wasn't the one trapped beneath it. Roman stood firm, pinning Alexander. His presence was overwhelming, and the room seemed to shrink under the weight of his energy. I had to do something. I couldn't let this escalate further. "Roman, let him go," I said, softer this time, trying to reach him. "It's over. He's not worth it." Roman's eyes didn't leave Alexander, but I saw the smallest flicker of hesitation in his posture. It wasn't much, but it was enough. He took a step back, releasing Alexander and letting him fall ungracefully to the floor. Alexander coughed, clutching his throat as he stood shakily. But instead of retreating, he turned those furious amber eyes on me. "You're really choosing him?" he demanded, his voice thick with betrayal. "After everything, you're choosing him over me?" "This isn't about choosing," I snapped, clenching my fists. "This is about you not knowing your place. You need to leave." His face twisted, a mix of anger and disbelief clouding his expression. "This isn't over," he growled, his wolf mason bristling beneath his skin. "It is over," I said firmly, crossing my arms. You don't get to decide when I'm done." Before Alexander could say anything else, Roman's power surged one last time. He took a step forward, allowing his wolf Logan to partially shift. His fangs elongated and his claws gleamed in the flickering light. His ice-blue eyes glowed like two shards of frost, deadly and cold. "One more word," Roman said, his tone calm but dripping with violent promise. His claws twitched, just inches from Alexander's throat, enough to draw a thin line of blood. "One more insult to my mate, and I'll rip out your throat." The air in the room felt razor-thin. Even Alexander, as powerful and ferocious as he was, froze under the oppressive wave of Roman's dominance. I felt Cora shrink inside me, her usual defiance replaced by quiet submission. Roman wasn't just commanding the room, he owned it. Alexander's amber eyes widened slightly, genuine fear flashing for a split second. "Scarlett," he gasped, his voice raw. "What have you gotten involved with?" Roman's smirk was dangerously calm as he leaned closer. "She's involved with me," he said, his voice laced with sharp finality. I stepped closer, my hands shaking slightly. "Alexander," I said, my tone softer but firm. "You need to leave. Now, this won't end well for you if you stay." Alexander glanced at me, the last remnants of his pride warring with his survival instincts. "You'll regret this," he muttered, but his voice lacked its usual bite. I held his gaze firmly. "And you'll regret staying." Roman allowed a flicker of indifference to cross his face as Alexander finally backed away. Every step he took toward the door felt like a weight lifting, though the tension still hung thickly. When he reached the door, Alexander turned one last time, his amber eyes narrowing. "This isn't the end," he promised, though the words carried more bitterness than conviction. I didn't bother responding. Instead, I watched as he disappeared into the night, his aura finally fading with the distance. As soon as the door clicked shut, I exhaled shakily, my knees threatening to give out beneath the sudden release of tension. My living room was a mess, furniture broken, the wall dented, but that wasn't what weighed on me. I turned to Roman, who now focused on me. Chapter 31, Dangerous Aftermath, Alexander's POV. I stumbled out of Scarlett's territory, my hand pressed tightly to my neck where blood still seeped from the shallow wound. The humiliation burned more than the pain. My head pounded, Mason's howl of fury echoing louder than my thoughts. His rage bled into mine, fueling the fire clawing at my chest as I trudged to my car. Jason was already waiting at the pack house gates when I arrived. The moment I stepped out of the vehicle, his expression darkened. His eyes scanned me, widening in alarm as he took in my disheveled appearance and the blood staining my shirt. "Alpha!" he exclaimed, rushing to my side. "What happened? Are you injured? Who did this?" I shoved him aside with more force than necessary, my jaw tight. "Not now," I snapped, stalking past him toward the doors. I couldn't deal with his questions, not with Mason snapping and growling in my head like a caged beast. Jason hurried after me, his voice hesitant but insistent. "Did Scarlett refuse? Did she attack you? I don't understand. What?" "Stop talking," I growled, my voice low and sharp. I spun around to face him, glaring at him so hard he actually stopped in his tracks. "It wasn't Scarlett," I bit out, my fists clenched so hard they shook. "There was someone else." Jason blinked, thrown off. "Someone else? Who? Scarlett's always been alone." "I don't." "A wolf," I interrupted, my tone like ice. "An alpha." Jason's eyes widened. "An alpha? Scarlett has an alpha in her house?" I let out a bitter laugh, the sound harsh in my ears. "Not just any alpha," I said, my voice trembling with restrained fury. "This wolf." I trailed off, unable to put into words what I had felt. The sheer weight of his power, the way his ice-blue eyes sliced through me as if I were nothing. My fists clenched tighter, nails biting into my palms. "He's not ordinary." Jason hesitated, his brows furrowed. What do you mean, Alpha?" I shoved past him, making my way further inside. He suppressed Mason. The words came out low, but the weight they carried was immense. Jason froze in place. "Suppressed? Mason?" His voice wavered, and I could see the disbelief flickering in his eyes. "That's impossible. No alpha should—" "Do I look like I'm joking?" I barked, spinning around to face him again. "This wolf didn't even have to fully shift. He was partially shifted, Jason. Partially. And he had Mason pinned down like a pup before I could even register what was happening." Jason's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. I could see him trying to make sense of what I was saying. "He's dangerous," I continued, my voice lowering dangerously. "You should have seen him. He claimed Scarlett like she was already his. Her scent was all over him." Jason, I practically spit the words out, the memory of that alpha's arms around her making Mason claw furiously within me. "I need you to find out everything about him, who he is, where he came from, what he wants." Jason hesitated. "Scarlett's always been so careful. She's never shown ties to any other wolf, Alpha. Are you sure?" "Enough," I snapped, cutting him off. "Do what I said, Jason. Find him. Now." Jason nodded stiffly, sensing the edge of my temper. "Yes, Alpha." I took a steadying breath, forcing Mason back as I continued toward the house. But even as Jason left, the tension didn't leave me. I reached the doors only to be overwhelmed by Grace's desperate mind link. "Alexander," her voice was faint, weak, trembling with pain. "It hurts." Her agony punched through our bond, sharp and invasive. Mason's rage flickered, momentarily replaced by concern. I gritted my teeth, pressing my palm against my face. "Hold on, Grace," I sent back, though my tone was strained. More images of Scarlett and that alpha flashed through my head, but I pushed them aside. Sarah was waiting outside the healing den. The second she saw me, she rushed forward, wringing her hands in distress. Her face was pale, her eyes filled with panic. "Alexander," she choked out. "Her condition is worsening. The healers, they've done everything they can. Nothing is working." Tears glistened in her eyes. "If we don't bring Hazel back," I closed my eyes, fighting the urge to lash out. "I'll handle it," I ground out. "Just go back to her." Sarah hesitated, doubt flickering in her expression, but she nodded and stepped back. I turned away quickly, my shoulders tense. My mind reeled with exhaustion, Grace's pain, that Alpha's power, Scarlett's cold indifference. It was all too much. But one thing was clear. I wasn't letting this go. No matter what, I would find out who that wolf was, and I would make him regret crossing me. The sound of the door slamming shut behind Alexander still lingered in the air. I stood rooted to the spot, my fists clenched as the tension slowly began to dissolve. My gaze shifted to Roman, who was pacing nearby, his jaw tight, his icy blue eyes dark with anger. When he finally stopped pacing, his shoulders relaxed slightly, and his gaze swept toward mine. Without a word, he crossed the room in one fluid movement, scooping me into his arms with surprising gentleness. "Roman," I murmured, but he didn't respond. His hold on me tightened as he began walking upstairs, his steps steady and deliberate. He was still radiating control, but I could sense the lingering frustration bubbling beneath his calm exterior. Once we reached my bedroom, he set me down on the bed carefully. For a moment, neither of us spoke. His hand lingered against my cheek, his thumb brushing lightly across my skin as if reassuring himself that I was unharmed. You didn't need to do that, I said softly, breaking the silence. I wasn't protecting him, Roman. You didn't want your house turning into a battlefield, he finished for me, his voice low but firm. His lips quirked into a faint smirk, though it didn't reach his eyes. Still lecturing me about violence, little wolf? My gaze dropped, guilt pricking at me. The chaos, it reminded me. I trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. I didn't need to. The memory of that years ago still lingered like a ghost at the edge of my thoughts. Roman's expression softened, though his irritation didn't entirely fade. His hand shifted, stroking the side of my neck gently. The still frightens you, doesn't it? He asked, his tone quieter this time. I nodded, unable to meet his gaze. It's not something you just forget. He let out a long breath, pulling me closer until my head rested against his chest. Fine, he said after a moment. His tone was reluctant, but held a hint of humor. I'll behave, mostly. Mostly? I shot him a look, my voice laced with faint exasperation. Roman chuckled, the sound low and rumbling. I'm trying, little wolf, he said, amusement flickering in his eyes. But no promises if someone crosses the line. You'll just have to hope my self-control holds out. I sighed, leaning deeper into his embrace. Please don't start a territory war, Roman. Not here. Not now. He didn't answer, his expression conflicted, but the way his arms tightened around me told me he understood. For now, that was enough. Before I could say more, he stood abruptly, lifting me easily into his arms as if I weighed nothing. I gasped softly, gripping his shoulders instinctively. What are you? I have something to show you, he interrupted, his voice leaving no room for argument. His tone was calm but commanding, and I knew better than to protest. Chapter 32, Gifts and Confrontations. The early morning air was crisp and cool as the coastal breeze fluttered through my hair. Roman's car glided smoothly along the winding road, Hunter's sharp eyes on the rearview mirror. We were far from the city, the horizon opening up to endless waves of blue. I couldn't help but lean closer to the window, drawn in by the scent of sea salt and the sound of crashing tides in the distance. Where are we going? I asked, my voice a mixture of curiosity and hesitation. Roman, seated beside me, wasn't volunteering information beyond the occasional glance in my direction, as if gauging my reaction to every turn the car took. Hunter chuckled softly from the driver's seat. Patience, little wolf. You'll see soon enough. I narrowed my eyes at him through the rearview mirror, but didn't press further. Roman remained silent, his gaze fixed ahead. Except for the faint smirk tugging at the corner of his lips, that calm confidence of his never failed to intrigue and infuriate me in equal measure. Finally, the car slowed as we approached towering iron gates. They swung open with a smoothness that hinted at careful maintenance, revealing a sprawling estate beyond. As we drove closer, a mansion with elegant gray stone walls and expansive windows came into view. My breath caught. Roman stepped out first, circling around to open my door. It was a small gesture, but it radiated intent. He extended his hand to me, his ice-blue eyes glinting sharply. Come, Scarlett, he said, his tone so casual, yet commanding in a way only he could pull off. I took his hand reluctantly, eyes never leaving the breathtaking sight of the property before me. The mansion stood against the backdrop of the vast ocean, waves stretching infinitely under the faint glow of the pre-dawn sky. It was beautiful. What is this place? I managed to whisper, stepping forward as Roman's hand remained firmly on the small of my back, guiding me. Hunter leaned against the car, watching us with an almost amused expression. You really don't remember? He murmured, though the question was directed more at Roman than me. Roman's hand tightened slightly against my back, and he nodded toward the mansion. It's yours. What? My voice came out sharper than I intended, disbelief lacing the single word. Roman gestured toward the front steps, his expression wholly serious now. This was meant to be my gift to you, your coming-of-age gift for your 18th birthday. I froze mid-step, turning to look at him fully. His face betrayed nothing but quiet sincerity, though his eyes held a storm of emotions he wasn't voicing. Roman, the words caught in my throat. Hunter cleared his throat, breaking the uneasy silence. He put years into planning this, every detail, even the sunrise view, because someone once said it was the prettiest thing they'd ever seen. A lump formed in my throat as the memory of that conversation hit me. I'd been 16, leaning against Roman during a rare quiet moment by the Thorn Pack's eastern cliffs. I barely remembered mentioning it in passing back then, how much I loved watching the sunrise over water, how peaceful it made me feel amidst chaos. You remembered, I whispered, my voice breaking slightly. Roman stepped closer, his ice-blue gaze softening for the briefest moment. Of course, I remembered, he replied simply, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. No matter how long it's been, this place can only belong to you, Scarlett. Tears pricked the corners of my eyes before I could stop them. I closed the remaining distance between us, flinging my arms around him. He caught me, holding me tightly, his hands firm and steady against my back. His scent, pine and midnight, grounded me as he murmured near my ear. You'll never know how much I wanted you to see this, to have it, even after. His voice trailed off, but he didn't need to finish. I clung to him like he was my anchor, the weight of emotions too heavy to process all at once. Back at the Pack's sanatorium, the air was heavy with despair. Grace's pained whimpers echoed through the corridors, each one sharper and more desperate than the last. I sat by her bedside, brushing back the damp strands of platinum hair clinging to her fevered face. Her breathing was shallow, uneven, a faint sheen of sweat coating her pale skin. She's getting worse, the healer murmured softly from the foot of the bed, her eyes darting nervously to the silver-threaded restraints keeping Grace's trembling limbs in check. The spread is accelerating. Daniel stood by the window, his fists clenched at his sides, his face drawn tight with worry. The tension in the room was suffocating, and I could feel the fear radiating off him in waves. Do something! I snapped at the healer, my voice cracking. Isn't there anything you can do? She flinched, bowing her head low. We've tried every method, Luna. Without Hazel's expertise. The mention of Hazel made my blood boil. Scarlett, my own daughter. The one person who could change everything if she weren't so damn stubborn. Grace groaned weakly, her body arching against the restraints as if her wolf was fighting to break free. My heart clenched painfully as I reached for her hand, squeezing it tightly. Stay with me, Grace, I whispered desperately. We'll fix this. I swear. The door slammed open suddenly, and Alexander strode in, his expression thunderous. One look at his face was all I needed to see. Scarlett had refused him again. Grace's pained cries pierced through the psychic bond connecting the Pack, amplifying her agony into every corner of our minds. I wanted to scream at Scarlett's cruelty, at how she could just watch Grace suffer from afar without lifting a finger. Enough was enough. I stormed out of the ward, heading directly to the sanatorium's landline. If Scarlett wouldn't listen to Alexander, she would listen to me. She didn't have a choice. The sunrise was breathtaking, painting the ocean in shades of gold and pink as I stood on the balcony of the mansion Roman had given me. The calm waves rolled endlessly, their sound soothing against the backdrop of my thoughts. Roman was inside, giving me space, though I could almost feel his presence lingering just behind the glass doors. My phone buzzed loudly from the kitchen counter, startling me. I hesitated before picking it up. The number flashing on the screen wasn't one I recognized. Hello, I answered cautiously. Scarlett! Sarah's sharp voice cut through the line like a blade. My grip on the phone tightened instinctively. I cannot believe what you're doing. No, what you're refusing to do, she snapped. Grace is dying! You're coldly watching her suffer while you just sit there? What kind of person does that make you? Her arrogance, her audacity to call me and spew venom while she overlooked years of betrayal, made my blood boil. You dare lecture me? I snapped back, my voice sharp. Do you even remember the daughter you've ignored for Grace all these years? The one you told to let it go when rogues nearly killed her for your precious Grace? You don't understand. No, you don't understand. I cut in coldly. You lost the right to call yourself my mother when you chose to protect your lies over me. Sarah's furious breathing was loud through the receiver, her silence telling me she had no counter to my words. And Grace? I continued icily, my anger bubbling through every word. She may have escaped the last time she tried to destroy me, but she hasn't escaped yet. This is retribution. Scarlett, please. The call ended with a sharp beep as I disconnected, the phone slipping from my hand onto the counter. Turning back toward the balcony, I let the ocean's calmness wash over me. Through the glass, I felt Roman's protective presence settle over me once more. For the first time in years, I felt finally, truly free from Sarah's manipulations. Chapter 33. Karma. The obnoxious screech of the dial tone pierced the silence, louder than any scream could ever be. Scarlett's voice, icy and sharp, still lingered in my mind, carving deeply into my fragile composure. She had hung up, completely cutting any possibility of a resolution. I stared at the phone in disbelief. My hands shook as I slammed it back down, the movement jerky and angry. My body trembled, not just with frustration, but with the overwhelming grief pounding in my chest. Scarlett didn't just hang up. She shut out any hope in an instant. I redialed immediately, unwilling to accept defeat. The line rang, and rang, and rang. Nothing. A bitter laugh poured out, harsh and cracked. Of course, there was no answer. I gripped the phone tighter, shaking as I attempted another number. This time the line didn't ring. It went dead before it even connected. Scarlett's phone was now turned off. My heart sank even deeper into the pit of my stomach. She had cut me off entirely. My own daughter. The child I raised, the one I protected, had shut me out completely, and in doing so she was sentencing Grace to suffer. The realization burned. Rage and helplessness churned together inside me, clashing like a vicious storm. My breathing quickened as I fought to contain it, but Grace's agonized cries from the sacred healing chamber broke through my thoughts like shards of glass. Her pain was alive in the air, creeping into my very bones. My wolf, Alma, whined in my mind, a pitiful sound, grieving and powerless. My hands pressed against the table as I leaned forward, gripping so tightly my knuckles turned white. Anger boiled over into frustration. "Why is she like this?" I whispered aloud, my voice trembling. My nails scraped harshly against the wood. "How can she be so cruel? Doesn't she understand? Grace is dying." The door creaked open, and I didn't have to look to recognize who it was. Daniel entered quietly, almost timid in his movements, as if he feared setting me off further. His pale face was tight, conflicted, but he gathered his courage and walked closer. "Mother," he said gently, his voice slow and careful, "let me talk to Scarlett. If she won't listen to you, she might." I whipped around, cutting him off sharply. "You think she'll just change her mind because you asked Daniel?" My voice cracked, raw from anguish. "You think Scarlett will suddenly feel pity because you sweet-talk her?" I shook my head in disbelief, laughing bitterly. "She has hardened her heart. She's not the girl she used to be." Daniel flinched at my outburst. His chest rose and fell heavily as he held his ground. "But doing nothing won't help Grace," he retorted softly, though his words were heavy with resignation. "We have to try something. Anything." I sank into the nearby chair with a thud, pressing my fingertips harshly onto my temples. The fight drained out of me at his words, though my frustration remained. "She's punishing me," I admitted after a long pause, the bitter truth spilling from my lips like venom. "This isn't just about Grace. Scarlett is taking her revenge for everything. For the choices I made when she needed me most." My throat tightened. And now Grace is paying the price for it all." Daniel said nothing. The guilt in his expression mirrored mine. His silence felt heavier than words ever could. The sacred healing chamber felt colder today. The pack's elders murmured faint prayers in the background, their ancient chants mingling with Grace's faint cries of pain. I stood at the doorway, rooted for several moments before I finally stepped inside. The weight of the room threatened to buckle my knees. Grace lay bound to the sacred stone slab. Her frail form shivered beneath her restraints. Her once glowing, angelic features were now shadowed, her skin pale and clammy. Silver streaked her veins, spreading like poison, a cruel reminder of the curse holding her captive in this nightmare. I moved closer, and with every step the weakness in her body became more apparent. Her delicate hands twitched faintly as she tried to shift, but the restraints held firm. "Grace," I whispered, kneeling by her bedside in one fluid, desperate movement. My hand reached for hers, gently wrapping around her trembling fingers. Her touch was icy cold. She stirred lightly, her head tilting just enough for her glassy blue eyes to flicker open. She looked at me for only a moment before her gaze drifted to Alexander, who was already seated beside her. His broad shoulders crouched low, chest pressed to the edge of the bed as he fought to anchor himself. "Alpha," Grace's voice came, barely above a breath. Her cracked, dry lips trembled, trying to form words difficult to say. Alpha, will I ever? No, he interrupted abruptly, his voice firm yet choked. He gripped her hand tighter, his amber eyes locking onto her as if willing her to listen. You're not going to finish that sentence, Grace. She gave the faintest shake of her head, the attempt weak and pitiful. My wolf, she murmured through shallow breaths. Her tears welled up, slipping down her temples. I just want to feel it again. The shift, if only once. Her body convulsed slightly, trembling harder against the restraints. My heart shattered at the sight, her broken plea echoing in my soul. Alexander's lips tightened into a thin line, but his hand only gripped hers tighter. You will, he rasped. His voice cracked but carried conviction. You will shift. We'll run together on the ancient grounds. I swear this to you. You'll be free again. Grace's gaze flickered with faint hope as she gave a shallow nod. But her expression darkened as the pain surged again, her voice cracking. If I don't, Alexander snapped suddenly, a snarl laced into his words. The power of Mason, his wolf, flared briefly, though he contained it for Grace's sake. If I don't make it, she forced weakly, ignoring his outburst. Proceed. Her eyes watered as they searched his. Proceed with Scarlett. Mark her if. An animalistic growl erupted from Alexander. Enough, Grace, he roared, shaking with barely restrained fury. His fist pounded against the edge of the slab, as if venting the anger gripping his chest. I will not. His amber eyes blazed fiercely. You are my mate, Grace. Mine, no one else. Everyone in the room reeled from the intensity of his outburst, myself included. It felt as if his very declaration had sucked the air out of the chamber, suffocating with finality. Grace closed her eyes again. Whether in exhaustion or acceptance, I wasn't sure. Seconds later, her body arched violently against the restraints. A scream tore from her lips, shattering the hearts of everyone present. Help her, I shouted at the healers who were already scrambling to adjust their efforts. The silver burned visibly along her veins now, crawling mercilessly as her agony grew sharper. Her cries bridged every spiritual connection in the pack, her pain battering at the minds of every wolf connected to her. Even Alma winced internally, while I fought to hold back tears. One healer fumbled with vials and herbs, hurriedly mixing something on the nearby table. Another pressed their hands to Grace's forehead, chanting healing prayers, but they were faltering. Hazel's absence loomed large, and every wolf in the room knew it. It wasn't working. None of it. Alexander's breathing grew erratic as he stood abruptly. His face was pale and drawn, his fury mounting as Grace's condition only worsened. He turned sharply to Jason, who stood quietly in the corner, his posture tense. I can't watch this, Alexander hissed, storming from the chamber with long strides. The door slammed behind him as the tension-infused room oscillated in his absence. Jason followed silently but glanced back one last time, his expression unreadable. I stayed behind, frozen in place. The chamber felt colder than ever before, the sorrow hanging heavy, pressing down with unbearable force. Grace's body arched again, her cries coming out hoarse and broken. I dared another step closer to her, but even I knew there was little left I could offer. For a moment, my thoughts drifted unbidden to Scarlett. I closed my eyes, remembering a younger version of her. The child I had left in this same chamber so long ago after she returned from an attack, starving, wounded, broken. I had stood in this very same spot, but my mind had only been on Grace. My hands had comforted Grace, while Scarlett had suffered in silence, believing herself forgotten. Now my choices had come full circle. The Grace I had once shown to Grace, while withholding from Scarlett, had built this house of cards where love had turned to failure. And karma was breathing down my neck, relentless and cold. This time, I looked at Grace's pale, thrashing form and cautiously reached out to brush her hair. This time, I let the crushing weight of my choices fall upon me. Tears slipped freely from my eyes, Alma's mournful howl rising in harmony with Grace's unending agony. I was no healer, no savior, and now, not even a mother. Instead, I was the architect of this sorrow, the person who had believed love could absolve everything. Scarlett was gone, Grace was slipping, and I was the one who cursed them both. Chapter 34, Desperate Measures, Alexander's v. Jason knocked lightly on my office door before stepping in. His expression alone told me whatever he had to say wouldn't be what I wanted to hear. He looked tense, his shoulders stiff, his eyes avoiding mine for a moment too long. Mason growled low in my mind, agitated by the delay. "Well, speak," I barked, my patience already worn. Jason inhaled slowly, as if the words were physically painful. "Alpha, we've pursued every lead, checked every contact in and outside the Northern Territories." His words were deliberate, cautious. "And," I prompted sharply. Jason's expression darkened. "And every trail ends in nothing. Whoever this Alpha is, his presence is wiped clean. There's no trace of him where we're looking." Mason snarled in my head, snapping at invisible threats. The memory of that Alpha, his quiet, suffocating dominance, those piercing blue eyes locking onto me like I was prey, rose unbidden, and fury followed close behind. My fists clenched. "Wiped clean," I repeated bitterly, my tone hard. "What does that even mean, Jason? No one can just vanish. Someone, somewhere knows who he is." Jason shifted, his discomfort obvious, but he didn't falter. "Alpha, it's deliberate, purposeful, as if someone doesn't want him found. It feels like they're covering his tracks." The weight of Jason's words hung in the air, suffocatingly heavy. "Covering his tracks?" I hissed. "Who could even do that? Who has that kind of power?" Jason hesitated for a fraction of a second before finally saying what he'd clearly been dreading. "It feels like the Shadow Organization's hand is in this." Mason's roar hit me like a tidal wave, clawing at my restraint. The Shadow Organization. Those elusive ghosts in the wolf world, powerful enough to make even the strongest packs tread lightly. And now the wolf who dared to stand between me and Scarlett might be tied to them. I leaned forward over my desk, glaring at Jason with enough force to make him shift his weight uncomfortably. "So what's your plan, Jason?" I demanded, my voice cold as ice. Jason straightened reflexively. "I think we should confront Scarlett directly. She knows who he is. She could—" "No," I growled, my voice loud enough to make Jason flinch. The idea of seeing Scarlett again, defiant and calm, wrapped in another Alpha's scent, was unbearable. It burned like acid in my chest. My knuckles turned white as I gripped the edge of the desk, forcing down Mason's snarls. "She'll twist the truth," I spat, pacing now to keep from lashing out. "She knows how to manipulate. She knows how to play her cards." I slammed my fist down on the desk, the wood creaking under the pressure. "She's not some naive little pup. She's cunning." Jason nodded reluctantly but remained rigid under my glare. "But Alpha, if this Shadow Organization is protecting him, this isn't a simple matter." His tone softened as if trying to reason with me. "Then we hit harder," I barked, cutting him off. "I don't care how many strings you have to pull. I want every lead followed. I want his name, his pack, everything about him laid bare. Do you hear me?" Jason swallowed hard, nodding. He turned to leave, but hesitated at the door. "What if Scarlett doesn't want him found, Alpha? What if—" His voice trailed off, but I didn't need him to finish. The unspoken implication twisted like a knife in my gut. Mason's growls deepened in my mind, his anger barely restrained. "Then," I said slowly, my voice low and venomous, "she's in deeper than she realizes. Either way, I'll deal with it." Jason nodded once more before exiting quickly, closing the door behind him. Alone, I tried to rein in the storm raging inside me. The memory of that Alpha resurfaced again. His eyes, his aura, the way he stood in nothing but a towel, yet radiated power. More than I had expected, more than I wanted to admit. Mason snarled, hating the echo of that crushing dominance. No one had ever subdued him like that. No one. But then Grace's voice shattered my spiraling thoughts like glass. Her mind link slipped through the haze of my anger, soft and fragile. "Alexander," her voice trembled, raw with fatigue. "It's spreading again. It hurts so much. I don't know." "Stop." I snapped instinctively, masking the rising panic in my chest. "You're not giving up, Grace. Do you hear me? I won't let you." But even as I said the words, doubt crept in. Hazel was gone. Scarlett was ensnared in her own web of refusal. And Grace, it felt like I might lose her. The sight that greeted me in the sacred chamber twisted my stomach in ways I hadn't expected. Grace, who once sparkled with ethereal beauty, now lay pale and trembling on the sacred stone. Veins of silver poison marked her skin in jagged, angry lines that seemed to pulse like a living thing. She barely turned her head as I approached, her hollow eyes meeting mine. "I can't stay here," she croaked, her voice shaking as much as her fragile body. "Alexander, please, I need to leave." Her words hit me harder than any physical blow. I knelt beside her, gripping her cold hand carefully. "What are you talking about, Grace? This is where you'll heal." "You just need more time." "No," she rasped, tugging weakly at my hand. "I can't." Tears welled in her eyes as she struggled to speak. "I can't stay here, surrounded by these stones and herbs. It feels like a tomb." Her voice broke, and Mason let out a soft whine in my mind. "It's too much, Alexander," she whispered. I shook my head, my grip tightening protectively around hers. "You're not giving up, Grace. You can't." "I keep dreaming about the ocean," she murmured, cutting me off. "I can smell the breeze. I can hear the waves. It's peaceful. I want to feel it. Just once. Please." Her final word was a broken plea, and I felt something deep inside me. Her pain was unbearable, both hers and mine bleeding together through the weakening bond. I swallowed hard, forcing Mason to heal. "Fine," I said softly, my voice almost unrecognizable. "Fine." The flicker of relief in Grace's watery gaze nearly brought me to my knees. Jason worked tirelessly for hours, scouring reports for a safe seaside retreat that could bring Grace peace without risking her fragile condition. It couldn't be just anywhere. It had to have both medical and spiritual safety. Eventually, we found it. The reports painted a perfect picture. A secluded mansion at the edge of the world, perched near the coastline with sprawling views of the sea. It was surrounded by natural barriers, offering both privacy and serene beauty. It felt like the solution, until Jason returned with an expression that struck me like a slap. "We failed to secure the property, Alpha," Jason said carefully, his tone laden with unease. "What?" I snapped, rising to my feet, my heart beginning to pound as Mason stirred restlessly. Jason hesitated, but forged on. "I reached out to the property's caretakers. I offered 5 times the usual tribute, money, resources, anything to secure it quickly." "And?" I demanded, my voice colder than ice. Jason shifted uncomfortably. "They refused," he said finally. "Flat out," Mason roared, his anger spilling over into me as I growled audibly. "Refused?" I repeated heatedly. "No one refuses an offer like that." Jason winced. "Alpha, they didn't just refuse. They laughed. The caretakers said no amount of money or resources could change the owner's mind." Chapter 35, Investigation. The sea breeze poured through the open windows, carrying with it the faint crash of waves and the salty tang of the ocean. Standing on the balcony, I let the peacefulness of the moment wrap around me. Cora purred softly in my mind, content for the first time in what felt like forever. Yet, the sudden, mouth-watering aroma drifting up from below snagged my attention. A moment later, my stomach grumbled loudly, betraying me. I glanced down at the navy sweater Roman had given me. It still carried his scent, comforting but distracting. Frowning, I wrapped it tighter around myself and headed downstairs to investigate. The kitchen was alive with activity. I stopped at the doorway, blinking in surprise. There were 3 chefs, actual chefs, moving around with precise efficiency. Pots bubbled, pans sizzled, and the smell was overwhelming. It reminded me of the parties Roman used to orchestrate when we were younger. The scents, the laughter, the indulgence, it all came rushing back. Hunter leaned against the counter, a satisfied smirk stretching his lips as he sipped what I assumed was coffee. "Hunter," I started, folding my arms. "What is all this?" "Ah, little wolf," he said, setting his mug down with an exaggerated bow. "Welcome to Roman's gift of extravagance. Your moon-blessed feast, prepared by only the finest." I raised an eyebrow. "Feast? This looks excessive." Hunter shrugged, his grin widening as he motioned toward the dining table, which was already packed with plates of steaming food. "You've been running yourself ragged for years. Roman told us to make sure you eat, and eat you will." Before I could protest, one of the chefs approached, carrying a platter of something that looked far too decadent for breakfast. "Miss Scarlett," he said, his tone unnecessarily formal. "This is your favorite, I believe?" My stomach betrayed me again with another loud growl. I swallowed hard, trying to remember the last proper meal I'd had. Shoving aside the lingering guilt of indulgence, I stepped forward cautiously. "Maybe just a little," I murmured, reaching for the plate. I devoured more than just a little. In no time, I found myself seated at the table, surrounded by empty plates. I couldn't stop. The flavors were rich, vibrant, and nostalgic all at once. Each bite was a reminder of better times, of the warmth of family, a sensation I hadn't felt in too long. Hunter, of course, took great pleasure in watching me. "You're putting those pups at the pack feast to shame," he drawled, his brown eyes sparkling with mischief. "Shut it, Hunter," I muttered, but a smile tugged at my lips despite myself. Cora hummed with a rare contentment. Between the food and the safe atmosphere of the seaside mansion, she felt at ease, a far cry from the tension that defined most of our days. Hunter's wrist buzzed with his calm feedback device, and he chuckled before holding his hand up. "Incoming," he warned. Right on cue, Roman's deep voice slid into my mind through our mate bond, rich with amusement. "Still eating, little wolf?" I froze mid-bite, narrowing my eyes. "How do you know what I'm doing?" Hunter burst into laughter, holding up his phone to display the text message from Roman himself. "How much has she eaten already? Keep an eye on her." I shot Hunter a glare as Roman chimed into my mind again, his tone laced with the same teasing warmth that made me both fume and melt. "Tell her to stop before she regrets it," Roman said, his mental voice carrying a faint chuckle. "Bossy," I muttered, setting the fork down reluctantly. Through our bond, I felt his smug satisfaction. "You'll thank me later." Sure enough, I realized just how full I was. A small smile crept onto my face as I pushed the plate away. The warmth, the calm, it was all intoxicating. For the first time in years, I gave myself permission to simply feel at ease. Allendersby. Grace's cries haunted me even as I sat in my office. Every anguished sound that echoed through our mate bond was like a knife twisting deeper into my chest. But beyond the pain of her suffering was the gnawing anger that simmered just beneath the surface. "Jason," I barked, my patience dangerously thin. My beta straightened in the corner, his steadfast loyalty evident even as he shifted uncomfortably under my glare. "Tell me again. What happened at the mansion?" My fingers tapped relentlessly against the polished wood of my desk, a reflection of the storm brewing within me. Jason cleared his throat, clearly trying to find the right words. "The estate is an even tougher target than we anticipated. The guards." He hesitated, scratching the back of his neck. "They were almost mocking Alpha when I offered to negotiate." "Mocking?" I repeated, leaning forward slightly, my amber eyes narrowing. "Explain." Jason nodded stiffly. "They made it perfectly clear. No amount of resources, no deals, no negotiations. Nothing will sway the ownership of that mansion. The guards wouldn't even let me close enough to examine the property properly." "And Scarlett?" Her name rolled off my tongue with a sharp edge, the word itself sparking another wave of restless fury. Jason grimaced slightly. "She was there, Alpha." The room fell deathly silent. "What?" The single word was laced with barely controlled rage. Jason held up his hands quickly, as if to ward off the brunt of my anger. "I wasn't expecting her. She walked out onto the balcony while I was speaking to the guards. She looked relaxed, comfortable. Everything inside me snapped taut, Mason snarling violently beneath my skin. "Comfortable?" Jason nodded grimly. When I addressed her directly, she didn't deny anything. She just smirked. He hesitated again before adding, "She didn't feel the need to explain herself, Alpha. She didn't see me as a threat at all." The vision of her, standing triumphant, untouchable, burned itself into my mind. How could she? How dare she? Jason cleared his throat again, snapping me out of my internal tirade. "Also, Alpha," he added cautiously. That mysterious Alpha wasn't visible at the time, but his presence was still obvious. The guards, the way they stood, their unwavering confidence, they're either directly under him or fanatically loyal. I turned away, the view from my office window doing little to cool my boiling rage. Scarlett, unbothered, unshaken, living in the lap of luxury, while Grace suffered. The image of her smirk mocked me relentlessly. The silence of the room was shattered by a loud, frustrated growl. Daniel Winter appeared at the fringe of my peripheral vision, his agitation radiating in waves. He'd overheard more of the conversation than he should have, his sister's name clearly striking a nerve. "She's doing this on purpose," Daniel hissed, his fists clenched tightly. "Grace is dying, and Scarlett's off playing queen with her new alpha lapdog." "Shut it, Daniel," I snarled, turning to face him sharply. But the younger Winter didn't back down. "You haven't seen her like this before, Alexander. She doesn't care. Everything she does, it's calculated. Grace could die, and Scarlett wouldn't so much as blink." Mason stirred restlessly inside me, his own anger building. The truth was, I couldn't completely dismiss Daniel's words. Scarlett's indifference to Grace's condition, her choices that undermined every attempt I made, each action felt deliberate. Jason stepped in smoothly, his calm demeanor cutting through the tension. Alpha, what are your orders? My orders? My voice was low, measured, and deadly. Mason growled softly as the words left my lips, filled with venomous intent. Find everything there is to know about that mansion and Scarlett's connection to it. Find out where he came from. Jason nodded, but I wasn't finished. And this time, I added, my tone icy, do not fail. Grace's soft cries pulsed faintly at the edge of my mind, blending with the burning image of Scarlett's smirk. The weight of it pressed down on me. Failing wasn't an option anymore, and Scarlett wouldn't walk away from this unscathed.